Power Rangers kind of blowing up. You got a pretty big story attached to it. I know I was at the booth earlier. They've got a giant book for sale as far as like 12 or 13 issues. You know, is there any future to this story you can talk about a little? And what was it like writing the Power Rangers as well?
Well, I'm done. I left the book. Okay. So, I can't talk about anything. It's all Marguerite Bennett taking over. There's a graphic novel coming out in December called Soul of the Dragon that I wrote. It's kind of like an old version of Tommy Oliver coming back to try to save his son who's in harm's way. I don't want to spoil too much, but no, beyond that, like, look, it was an honor and a privilege to be involved with the franchise and to really create the first material that was aimed at an older audience. I mean, I'll always hold it in a kind of like fondly and warm place in my heart, but all good things have to end, and it was time to move on, and so I'm just kind of going forward now.
Now, as far as structuring that story, did you find any difficulties because it was such
Are you talking about Shattered Grid or what story? I did 3 years.
The Shattered Grid story.
Yeah.
As far as because the mythology is kind of so entrenched, you're creating something, you know, a little new. Like you said, it's an adult in a generally kid market. Did you feel like there was any maybe creative constraints because of that, or no, you felt like you had the creative freedom to do what you felt was necessary for the story?
I mean, look, it's always a conversation. I have editors at Boom who are fantastic. I have license owners at Saban who are fantastic. It's always a conversation. So what I want to build, the stories I want to tell, it's a process of pitching and writing outlines and then writing scripts and then taking notes and the whole thing. So I always felt supported, that everyone was in my corner trying to help me tell the best story possible, enabling me to tell the best story possible. But as far as mythology, no, I mean, like, I constructed it in a way where I could pull what I needed, but and then add and create new mythology that was integral to the story. I mean, I wouldn't say creative constraints. I would just say that everything was done with very creative focus. I don't build stories to answer mythology questions. Like, I think that's BS, you know? Like, if there's continuity or mythology I can bring in to the story I want to tell, like, great, I will, you know? But I'm not someone who's like, you know, they had this question in this episode, like, I should go answer that. That's not the way that I construct things. So I think because of that, everything that I did in Shattered Grid was done with a purpose, narratively. And so I think it made it much easier to get people on board with what we were trying to do, because it all was done with a reason.
When you approach a story, do you have a specific formula you try to follow? Obviously, comments. No.
I mean, everything is different. Okay. This isn't making cogs, you know. Like, it's what are the needs of the project, what are the needs of the story, and what are the needs of the event. In the case of Power Rangers, the way I wrote the first 2 years is different than the way I wrote the third year. The third year was a mega event that came out of the first 2 years, but structurally, something like that is going to be very different than writing, you know, the long-running first 2 years of the book. And I think event stories in general tend to have a little bit of different needs and expectations. And so you just look at everything, you approach it differently based on the needs of the given project. Yeah.
So then if you approach those needs differently, is it kind of the same way? Do you have an artist in mind, a visual in mind, or do you kind of approach it, like you said, as needed, or you're like, no, I'm writing for this particular artist?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I started Shattered Grid before Daniele was locked in as the artist. So once he was locked in, that changed how I thought of things. And that's very, very common. It usually takes a couple issues working with a new artist to really get in the groove. I come from a screenwriting and directing background, so I think visually on everything. But then when you work with someone like Daniele, who's just, you know, he's a titan, man. Like, he's fantastic. He has such an incredible eye. It makes my job easier, and it actually pushes me to think even further outside the box and construct, hopefully, sequences that, you know, will really showcase his talents.
Because comics is such a collaborative, effort, how much time do you put into the communication? How key is it? I know most people say
it depends on the book. It depends on the artist. I've done books where I've never talked to the artist ever. Everything went through the editor. Power Rangers, Daniele and I talked every day. Walter, our colorist, and I talked almost every day as well, just over like Facebook Messenger. So this is one where it was very, very, the lines of communication were very open between us.
Now you're done with Power Rangers. What is next on the horizon for you as far as creator-owned projects and possibly some work for hire?
Well, I'm doing the Winter Soldier at Marvel, and so that first issue comes out December 5th. I'm doing that with Rod Reese, my old friend from Cowl and Hadrian's Wall days. I'm actually editing my first series at Image with a new creator, Matt Groom and Eduardo Ferragato. And it's a really cool science fiction kind of fantasy series called Self-Made. That's also out December 5th. And then we've got the Soul of the Dragon original graphic novel coming out on December 5th. So that's in the immediate future. And then there's some live action things that I'm working on. And a couple other things that, can't talk about just yet.
Now you said this is the first time you're doing editor work. How much do you like it, and what do you feel like there's a big change, or because you worked on comics so long, it's not really a big shift?
I like it. I mean, I've basically served as editor on all of my Image books. I mean, I'm dealing with scheduling, I'm dealing with promotional material, I'm dealing with getting the files up to the printer, things like that. So I actually kind of enjoy that part of the process a bit. It kind of fits with my OCD side. But yeah, working with a new writer and just helping them to narratively build the best story possible, it's a lot of fun, and I don't have to write, so that part's nice too.
If you had to pick one property that's your dream property to work on, what would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I've kind of already done it. Batman would be it. Nightwing would be it. I don't feel like my run on Nightwing was necessarily what I wanted it to be. But the fact that I had the opportunity to tell a big story with Dick Grayson and then come back a few years later and do Nightwing: The New Order, I feel very privileged and very proud of that fact. And the New Order stuff is like, it's if that's the last Nightwing story I ever tell, it's a really great note to go out on.
If you had one artist that are alive to work with, who's your dream artist?
I mean, it depends on the project. Like, if you're asking me, like, if I had an artist I could work with on Batman, I'm going to give a different answer than, like, an artist I could work with on Power Rangers, I don't know. I mean, there's so many. I was just talking to Adam Kubert earlier today. We haven't seen each other in several years, and I'm a huge, huge fan of his and Andy's. I would love to do something with Adam Kubert. We'll go with that.